William Engdahl is on the line with us from Germany, actually. William, Engdahl is how you spell his name, and I spell that for you because the website is engdahl.oilgeopolitics.net. He is the author of a number of books: A Century of War, Anglo-American Oil Politics, The New World Order, Seeds of Destruction. He is a journalist and a historian and an economic researcher, and his latest book is Full Spectrum Dominance, Totalitarian Democracy in the New World Order. William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate being here.
Glad to have you with us. The Financial Times today, a couple of stories in the Financial Times that just, popped my interest, and I wanted to toss them to you because it seems to me that from what I know of your work, and that I want to get into the Brzezinski doctrine, the Obama, this emerging Obama doctrine, but it seems that full spectrum dominance, the idea that we need to have absolute domination of all forms of warfare all across the world, if I'm correctly interpreting that, we and our allies. Between that and the starve the beast strategy of the Reagan years, run the United States into so much debt that there can be no social programs, we have put ourselves in this god-awful debt trap. And the IMF, here's these two pieces. The IMF sees end to global recession. The world economy is starting to pull out of the recession. The International Monetary Fund said yesterday the yen went up against the dollar. And the Financial Times sees that as good. As an American, I'm not sure that it is good because they're not saying the U.S. And then the other is unity on economy proves elusive. The G8 meeting basically came to no conclusions about anything, it seems. Are we in a debt trap? What is the future of the American economy versus the world economy? How are things realigning and why?
What began as a subprime crisis in August of '07, and that crisis was possible to see going way back to 2003 when Alan Greenspan began his low interest rate policy to spur home mortgage buying.
Right, and many of us were arguing that this was a disaster coming down the road. Well, actually, you could say it goes back to 98 when they rolled back Glass-Steagall.
Well, yeah, 99 and 2000 when Tim Geithner and Larry Summers, interestingly enough, the two key economic czars of the Obama administration, actually put in place the laws that allowed this unbridled speculation and fraud from Wall Street to take place. But what I see going on, and I've said this openly on a number of broadcasts recently, unfortunately, tragically, the U.S. economy, because of the fact that the Congress refuses to rein in the unbridled powers of the Wall Street Money Trust, as I call them. Because of that, the U.S. is going to face 10 years at least of economic hell. Pure hell like in the 1930s, probably considerably worse in terms of the human toll. And nothing that is on the horizon from the Obama administration, the current administration, is going to do a single thing to turn that sinking Titanic around.
So when the IMF says that their projections, let me get the numbers here, the IMF now forecasts global growth at 2.5% next year, up from 1.9% in April. Well, that's all well and good to say global growth is going to be 2.5%. China is growing at 9% right now. If we grow at a negative 3%, that kind of averages out, right?
Yes, something like that. Well, the point is the U.S. economy is just going in. There are no green shoots out there. This is all White House hype. But the U.S. economy is going into the fastest free fall since the Great Depression. And the housing sector is by no means anywhere years away from recovery. Actually, it's a whole second wave of the mortgage reset crisis that's due to kick in around this time or early autumn. And that'll continue through the end of 2011.
Not to mention the commercial crisis that's just now beginning.
Exactly, the commercial real estate crisis. But then what you have on top of that is unemployment is rolling through the real economy. And, to make trading quotas for corporations on global warming is not going to do what's needed to give people real jobs and producing real things and rebuilding something like $2 trillion of infrastructure deficit that the United States has built up over the past 3.5 decades when New York banks simply walked away from investing internally and decided to go outsource and do it cheaper abroad.
Well, and this is the thing. From the Great Depression until basically the Reagan administration, we had, well, actually from 1791 or 93 when Congress passed it, 1791 when Alexander Hamilton proposed a national industrial policy. From then until Reagan, and then it really blew out with Bill Clinton, with NAFTA, GATT, and the WTO. But it really began during the Reagan administration. Arguably, you could even put it back with Nixon and China, but I'd still place the beginning of it, or the last 2 years of the Carter administration with deregulation. We had a national industrial policy that built where we made things in the United States. We no longer have that. And when we combine the fact that we no longer protect our economy here in the United States with the fact that we have moved from a manufacturing economy to a service economy, and there's an absolute limit to how many times we can call it creating wealth if you mow my lawn and I wash your car. And then on top of that, you put into place what David Stockman said was overt, that they were going to, David Stockman, Ronald Reagan's chief economic advisor, said that they ran up a $3 trillion debt. They tripled the national debt. They borrowed more money than every president in the history of the United States combined, specifically so that when the Reagan administration left office, there would be so much debt that the Democrats wouldn't be able to expand Social Security or have a national health care program. And now that starve the beast strategy is coming back to, I mean, I don't see a way out of this with this kind of debt. Do you?
This is a classical debt trap like we've seen in third world countries back in the 1980s in places like Argentina or Mexico or Brazil, Poland, and so forth. And the only difference is the United States has a currency called the U.S. dollar, which is world reserve currency. Since it went off gold in 1971 August, when Nixon took it off the gold exchange standard, the U.S. dollar has been backed, initially by oil dollars through the oil shock of the 70s. But as I say, in the last, let's say 10 years since 2001, 8 or 10 years, the dollar has been backed by nothing but Abrams tanks and F-16 fighter jets.
Right.
In other words, the U.S. military's supremacy and the blackmail pressure that implies on nations like Japan and perhaps China to keep investing in dollar debt. And that's
Russia,
coming to
which
an
is
end.
the fourth largest holder of our dollar.
Yeah, and Russia. And that's coming to an end because their patience is wearing thin as they see their $2 trillion or more dollars of U.S. government debt simply beginning to wither away in front of their eyes.
Right.
So that's going to create it's a catch-22 any way that the Obama administration turns right now, and the situation is not helped by the fact that the economic team he has was made in Wall Street. It serves Wall Street like the most loyal servant you could imagine of a lord or something, and everything they've done has been to manipulate the crisis and bail out brain-dead banks like Citigroup and others that caused this crisis in the first place, and leave the ordinary American simply struggling to survive. And that, to my mind, is the wrong priority.
Your book, Full Spectrum Dominance, Totalitarian Democracy in the New World Order. If you can stick around over a break, I'd like to get into what that means and the consequences of that. We have to go to a break in about a half a minute. But it seems to me that the only way out of this for the United States might be for us to slightly inflate our way out of our debt and for us to reinstitute a national industrial policy and perhaps a tariff-based trade system and pull out of the WTO. And even at that, we're going to have probably 4 or 5 years of god-awful depression. Mm. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think it's at least 4 or 5 years, but something of that sort. It just has to be. United States has a workforce that 30 years ago was the world's envy, and that's been simply rotted away. We have to turn that around. Yeah,
absolutely. William Engdahl, and perhaps there are other options. Perhaps if we scaled back on our military, for example, it's $1 trillion a year. I want to get your thoughts on that right after the break. We're talking with William Engdahl, American-German freelance journalist, historian, and economist, author of a variety of books, A Century of War, Seeds of Destruction, and his newest, Full Spectrum Dominance, Totalitarian Democracy in the New World Order.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.